Perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. Just to give you a little bit of my background, as I said, I'm a doctoral student about to defend my dissertation. I am also a teacher of about 20 years, mostly with students with severe emotional and behavioral disorders. I've taught in Pennsylvania as well as in California. I have 5 foster children. I have 2 stepchildren. Our house is pretty colorful. My wife is African-American. Our stepkids are African-American. And then we have some Hispanic foster children. So that being said, let's just jump into creating an empathic classroom. Truly, the ripple effect is up to us. We can, everything that we do, everything that we say has an impact on the people around us, and particularly on the children, even if we think they're not watching. And we can make that in a positive way or a negative way. So we want to focus on the positive way. And what I want to talk to you about today is 5 different tools of empathy. And then we're going to actually take a little self-evaluation of where our empathy is. So our first aspect of empathy is, and it's a affective response. It's called affective response. And it is strictly a gut reaction. You see somebody and you have a reaction to them. Unbeknownst to us, we either like or dislike that person right away. Often and hopefully, as we get to know them, our opinion might change or become deeper, but it is strictly it's a limbic system response. It's a brain response that just says, this is what I'm thinking. It's very similar to the mirroring or the mirror neurons that have been explored significantly. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but often if you see someone smile at you, you smile back. That's a mirror neuron. We look at something and we automatically mimic that behavior. It's not really something that we can control. It's truly a subconscious response. Okay, this leads us to affective mentalizing. Okay. Affective mentalizing is where we start the actual cognitive processing. So affective response is strictly something that we cannot control. It just happens. 4 out of 5 of our aspects are cognitively based and cognitive processing issues. So this is basically affective mentalizing is bridging ourselves between the subconscious reaction and creating conscious meaning. So we see something and then we create a meaning. It's not quite to empathy yet because we create meaning from it, from our own experiences, our own history. We respond neurologically, we respond to our thoughts and our memories. So if I see someone who's about to fall, I think, oh my gosh, I remember when I fell in the street and how that felt and how silly I felt when I did that. So we equate that with seeing that person fall. Of course, it's a snap reaction. Our brain works very quickly and we roll through that. What's interesting is through the neurological testing and all the brain testing they've done, is that you can actually have the same response to seeing something happen as you can to imagining it. So a child who is imagining that they're getting abused, let's be real, they're getting hit, has the same response as when they actually got hit. So it's very important to remember that aspect as we move forward with our own empathy towards our children, because our children have experienced significant trauma. And we need to know that even if they're just thinking about it, it will bring the same response. Okay? So if they're sitting in your classroom and all of a sudden they start to cower, or they fall, they go under the desk, or they start to cry, it may be that whatever was said in the classroom may have triggered a memory and therefore triggered that trauma. And how we respond to that will make a lot of difference in how the child will then be able to move through that experience. Okay. This also begins our processing for recognizing that we have emotional systems with someone else. Okay. So we are going to be able to engage and recognize that other people are having emotional reactions just like we are. So it's still the very infancy stage. Humans versus zombies. This is what makes us human. You know, zombies just go and they eat everybody, right? They don't think about what the other person is going through. That's just their, I'm going, boom, done. As humans, we start to think about, well, how is that person going to feel if I take a bite out of their head? So that's kind of that beginning to start that affective mentalizing, and also another aspect of the empathy, which will continue to grow and develop as you understand all of the tools necessary. Self-other awareness. This is where we start to understand that we are distinct from others. Again, it starts in infancy when a child starts to look in the mirror and realize it's them. It's me, not you. Who is that? It's me. And watching them grow through that is very interesting for those of you who have children, because they don't realize that it's themselves until later, and when they can actually start to cognitively process that. So if they see a picture of themselves, you see yourself in the mirror, you realize that you are different from mom or daddy or sister, whomever. And once that distinction starts to happen, then you start to understand that you are two different entities. The brain processes actually overlap and coincide with each other while you're learning this, while you're starting to distinguish yourself from others. We need to know who we are so that we can survive. But we need to know that others have a distinct entity, so that we don't start to project our own thoughts and feelings on them. And this is a big thing that happens to people. We think, well, because of the previous, because of the affective mentalizing, because of the affective response, when somebody says to us, you're not doing that right, we immediately go to our memories. And if we've had a bad memory of somebody telling us we're not doing something right, that's where we go. And we then project what we feel. So if you are instructing a student and they're indicating that you're trying to tell them that they're not doing something right, you are very careful. If you've had those bad experiences, you're very careful to how you address that child. if you haven't, sometimes it becomes very, just very blunt. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing either way. It's just something that we need to be aware of so that we don't project our own issues on that child. Okay. Perspective taking. Now we're really getting into the what we typically call empathy, because we believe that, or the typical definition of empathy is being able to walk in someone's shoes. Difference being, though, we often can walk in someone's shoes, but it's how I feel walking in your shoes and how you feel walking in his shoes. So it's making sure that we differentiate not how I would feel when that happened to me, but truly trying to understand and recognize how that student would feel, understanding his experiences and her emotions in the things that she's lived through. I think this is a very, very important distinction that we don't always make. Again, I think empathy is just kind of a word that gets thrown out there quite a bit. Oh, I'm empathetic because I know how you feel. It's not about knowing how I feel in your situation. It's knowing how that person feels in their situation. Big distinction. An essential aspect of empathy is to recognize the other person as, sorry guys, you're in my way, as like the self, while maintaining a clear separation between self and others. Okay. So again, an essential aspect of empathy is to recognize the other person as like it was yourself, but understanding and keeping that clear separation between what you would react to because of your experiences and your memories and what they would react to because of their experiences, memories, and situations. Okay. You have to differentiate between the self-oriented perspective taking and other-oriented perspective taking. That's kind of that's just to sum up what I've really been talking about here. Okay, let's go. And then finally, we get to emotion regulation. Again, a cognitive process, managing our own emotions so that we can understand others' emotions. This is where it really gets sticky because many of us see a situation and all of that stuff that we've already talked about, the affective mentalizing, the affective response, the perspective taking, self-other awareness, it all kind of, especially when it's a very high level, high intensity emotion or high intensity behavior, we lose all of that. And we are not able to actually understand and put ourselves in their shoes with their feelings. So just a little story about how this really impacted me one day. I had gone to a trauma-informed conference, and one of the things that the guy talked about was being able to calm yourself down and maintain your own self so that when you get into a situation with another person who is going through a highly charged emotional situation, that you can react appropriately and also help that person work through and get through that highly charged situation at the moment. So he talked about this thing called the I want to say it's the vagal nerve, and it runs from the top of your head all the way down your spine. And the only thing he gave us, I don't know, he probably gave us 20 different things to try and calm yourself down and keep yourself under control and able to respond appropriately. And the only thing that worked for me was that vagal nerve thing. I just imagined this nerve in my head, and I felt it, and I would run it from the top of my head down through my spine. Well, I was teaching at the time, 6th grade. I was on a public education campus, and this 6th grader, who was bigger than I was extremely upset and had been through quite a lot in his life. And not only had he been considered emotionally disturbed and gone through some horrible experiences, he also had a mental illness. So when he went, so to speak, when that switch clicked for him, it clicked, and he could not see anything. You've heard of the seeing red. He saw red. And I was by myself with him outside, because typically I could talk him through whatever he was going through. Well, this was not happening today. And he started to approach in a very aggressive manner. And he continued to approach me. And I don't want to go anywhere with this guy. I know what's happening in his head. I don't know how to deal with it. So I continue to back up. And for whatever reason, this guy's trauma-informed practices jumped in my head. And I was like, okay, I'm going to look right at him, and I'm going to feel my vagal nerve and relax myself. And what happens is you can actually feel yourself, your eyes relax, your shoulders relax, everything in your body just kind of calms down. So I looked him in the eye and I said, Aiden, you're okay. And I, again, felt that nerve and relaxing, and I could feel my eyes relax, which was amazing because I was looking right into the sun. And I said, Aiden, you're okay. I'm okay. You're okay. We're going to be safe. And I just continued to look at him. And it took about 30 seconds to a minute, very long time, as he's still poised to give me a shot with his fist. And he started to relax. And it was kind of a life-changing experience for me, because I've done this all my life and have never been able to connect with a person like that in that way, without really trying to help him cognitively process what he was doing, because he could not cognitively process what was happening. But I was able to get him to relax and calm down. And finally, he actually started to get tears in his eyes. And it's a little emotional for me still, because he was able to get himself together and feel safe with me, because I was able to make get myself under control. So he no longer felt fear. And so anyway, that's how impactful our emotion regulation can be, and how important it is when you start to, sorry, I messed up my screen again, how important it is for us to maintain that as we go through, helping our kids go through what they go through every single day. So again, managing our own emotions to understand others' emotions, one's ability to manage intensity, direction, or form. It's actually been related to positive prosocial behavior in children. As they're able to regulate their emotions, we see better behavior. So there's a lot of importance in us being able to help them regulate so that they can start to behave in a pro-social manner as opposed to an antisocial manner. And frankly, a lot of our kids coming back, and somebody made the comment, our kids are kind of a mess coming back from the pandemic and coming back into our expectations of a school setting. Emotional contagion is kind of the feeling of that you start to adopt the other's emotions. And that's what happens when you're dealing with a very highly charged emotion of another person. We often have emotional contagion where you can see, and we call it the kids feed off of each other. That's what's happening. They see what's happening with somebody else and they get caught up in that feeling and they get swept away. So in a minute, you have one person who's not doing so well, and all of a sudden, we've got a whole classroom of kids that are a mess. So it's important that we are able to maintain ourselves so that we can work through the issue with that other child, so that it doesn't impact the rest of our class. Also, you'll start to recognize, and you probably already do, just can't put any words to it, but if we're highly charged, if we're very happy about something, or we're very sad about something, other people will start to gain those same emotions and feed off of us. And that's what's meant by the children will feed off of, the students will feed off the teacher. So it's really important that we maintain that. It is the fifth tool, but it is really the facilitator of all of the tools of empathy. So I don't like not being able to see anybody. Let's see what I can do here. Questions? What are you thinking right now? It's a lot of information. It's pretty intense. Any thoughts, reactions? Chat. There's one in the chat. What makes this holistic? Okay. The way we deal with it is what makes it holistic. Okay. Empathy in itself is not holistic, but how we incorporate all of our own feelings, all of our own beliefs, all of our own experiences with our children is what makes it holistic. If you don't deal with the child as a whole, you will not make an impact, and it will be difficult for that child to learn. If we are not making sure that those students feel safe, look at Maslow's hierarchy. They've got to feel safe. They've got to feel secure. They've got to be fed. Okay, all of those things. And Paul, I totally get this question because I was introduced recently to holism about 4 years ago. I couldn't tell you what holistic education is other than dealing with the child as a whole. And Nick, if you want to jump in here, I'm good with that. But I truly believe that we have to deal with the entire child. Okay, so what makes this holistic? Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, I mean, I've been involved in holistic research for a little over 20 years. And what I've come to understand is, and I'll give you an example. There was a it's a street example where a guy was coming at me in the street. And I thought, okay, how am I going to deal with this? And it could be a student in a class, sort of similar to the situation you were telling us earlier. And I thought, okay, how am I going to deal with this? So I thought, I have to go to my deepest level of being. I have to go to a very deep spiritual level and connect with this person. And so that's what I did. And in my head, I use words like vibration and vibe and resonance and entrainment. Those are my words that there's translating some of the things you were saying earlier. So what I did in my head, I just sent messages to this person. I said, I love you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to engage with you in the way that I think might happen. So why don't we just call it off? But just remember, I love you very much. So the guy turns around and walks away.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, he picked up on that vibe, you know, and
Yes.
you talked about that with different language. So my thought is what makes it holistic for me, and that's why I was asking, you know, what makes it holistic for you, in the sense that I try and go to the deepest level, and in some, you know, magical, holistic way, it ripples through the intellectual, the emotional, the physical, and you get that reaction. So that's how I frame it. I usually say the word, I go to the spiritual level, however I get there. And the quickest way for me is I just say, I love you. I just use that line. It's like a mantra. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because I'm just curious when, again, people throw around the word empathy, they also throw around the word holistic. And it's really, we've got to get to a definition, like what's your definition? And there's so many, and there's many, and they're all right. It's just, you know, what's the intention? What's the, you know, the outcome in an educational setting? So anyway, thanks very much. I just wanted to share that with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. That's right on. And what's exciting about both holistic education and empathy both is that it doesn't really matter what words you use. It's what you convey to each other. That connection is often just not even spoken, like you said. Most of what I said to Aiden, I said it once and I never said it again, but I kept thinking it. We're safe. You're safe. We're going to be okay. And there's so many things that you can say with your eyes that we, as long as it's going through our heads, that we convey to our children and our students. So absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate that input. What, anybody else? Any other thoughts or questions before we? Okay. What I'd like to do, I'm going to share my screen again. What I want to do is, we're actually going to take a little, it's called the Empathy Assessment Index, and it's by Gertis and Leitz from University of, I want to say, Arizona State. Sorry, it's Arizona State. It's not Arizona University. So when you go through this, we're going to ask yourself these questions, and I'd like you to just jot down your answers, put them in your phone, whatever. And you're going to score yourself from 0 through 6, and in each of the aspects that each of the aspects that we just talked about. And when we get the mean score, that will be your overall empathy score. And then we can talk about how we can address these things individually. Okay. Share my screen. Here we go. Okay. Affective mentalizing. So this is the ability for, and we'll just do it in a teacher-student relationship, the ability of the teacher to experience connection with the students, your gut level reaction. So from 0 to 6, I'm sorry, 1 to 6, 1 being never, 2 being rarely, 3 being sometimes, 4 being frequently, 5 being almost always, and 6 being always. what do you score yourself as for I am good at understanding other people's emotions? When I see a person experiencing a strong emotion, I can accurately assess what that person is feeling. When I see a person experiencing a strong emotion, I can describe what the person is feeling to someone else. And finally, I'm aware of other people's emotions. Now, remember, I pulled these pieces out of the entire assessment. This is not how they're listed in the assessment itself. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about those things and score yourself. And then we'll move to the next one. I can tell the difference between someone else's feelings and my own. I can tell the difference between my friend's feelings and my own. I can explain to others how I am feeling. So again, self-other awareness is where we recognize the difference between students' emotions and our own emotions. Go ahead and score yourself there. Perspective taking, stepping into someone else's shoes, okay, cognitively processing those emotions. I can consider my point of view and another person's point of view at the same time. I can imagine what a character is feeling in a good movie. Who cries in a movie when the character cries? I do. I can imagine what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. I can agree to disagree with other people. Under emotional regulation, emotional stability describes me well. When I get angry, I need a lot of time to get over it. Do you hold a grudge? Friends view me as a moody person. When I am upset, I get over it quickly. I'm going to come back because I missed one. Here we go. Here's the affective response. This is our gut level response. When I see someone receive a gift that makes them happy, I feel happy myself. When I see someone being publicly embarrassed, I cringe myself. When I see someone accidentally hit their thumb with a hammer, I feel a flash of pain myself. When I am with someone who gets sad news, I feel sad for a moment too. And hearing laughter makes me smile. Okay, so everybody got that. Everybody got their own scores. Okay, so what I want to do now is just kind of talk about. I don't want to hear your individual scores. Those are for you. Those are for you to evaluate where you are empathically, and figure out what you want to work on. You know, what kind of things that you feel like you could use in your own practice to help with those things.
Yeah, that was really interesting, considering those questions. Um, and I think the first one, I think it's pretty hard to self score. You know, awareness in how aware I am of other people's emotions, because if I'm not aware of it, I don't know what I don't know. So I think
Yes.
that, and that's an interesting, the later ones, as it went, the other questions were easier to self score, because it was like, well, if this happens, I feel this way, I can self score that. And that's, when you do some kind of 360 thing where other people score you
Mm-hmm.
on your awareness level, and then you get a better reading. But anyway, I just noticed that the later ones were easier to self score, and
I
I
would
felt
agree.
like, and I did notice that my regulation was the one I scored lowest on, and that's ongoing, just ongoing
Mm-hmm.
work. Just keep
Yep.
doing the work. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I
And that's,
appreciated considering all that. Yeah.
yeah. That's absolutely what it's all about, is just continuing to be aware of what you need to do, because too many people don't even understand what empathy entails, let alone understanding what you need to do to fix it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the first step. And when you realize that you don't understand, you can't rate yourself, then oh, wait. Okay, this is where I got to start. And P, understanding my own emotions before reacting, and then acknowledging students' emotions. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Anna? I think that's an excellent observation.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I can't get a handle of my own emotions, or I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm just reacting. And that doesn't help the student at all, because it's my emotions towards the situation instead of realizing how they're feeling and their needs, and then reacting towards their needs and their emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the mindfulness practices come in, the trauma-informed practices come in, where you have to keep yourself always on an even keel. And it is unbelievably hard work. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, we may not have time to, but Baumeister and Heatherton talked about reasons that we are not able to regulate. And one is misregulation and one is underregulation. And they talk about, first of all, missing the target completely. You think you're addressing the kids' issues and you're not at all. And the other one is often impacted by your physical feeling. If you're tired, controlling your emotions is a lot of work and a lot of energy. And there is only a finite amount of energy that you have. And if your energy is low that day, it's very difficult to keep yourself regulated. And I think it's just a matter of being aware of that issue so that you can say, okay, I'm really tired. So when something happens, I'm going to have to think about it before I react. And I'll tell you, it doesn't hurt to say, you know what, guys, I feel crappy today. I'm giving you a heads up. I do that with my students all the time. I don't feel well. I'm very, very tired. My kids had me up all night, whatever it is. And say, this is your heads up. So if I snap out at you, it's not because of you. Or let's really think about your behavior so that I don't snap out at you. Connect with them. It's okay for you to not be perfect. Anybody else? So just one last slide I have for you. And that is, takeaways. Affective response is a subconscious reaction. You have to remember that. Affective mentalizing, self-other awareness, perspective taking, and emotion regulation are cognitive processes. It takes time and concentrated effort to develop them. Be brutally honest in your self-evaluation. Misregulation, and this is what we were just talking about, misregulation and underregulation are causes of self-regulation failure. Okay, so that is what I have for you. I hope that, apologize, we had to kind of rush through that last piece, but hopefully you got a lot out of it. This is my contact information. Please feel free to email me, text. If you text me, I'll answer a text, but I won't answer any phone call until I know who it is. Feel free at any time. So thank you again. You guys were a great audience. Appreciate your involvement.